Hello, loveys. Welcome to the aftermath. It is April 30th, 2025, and I'm here today to talk about day 7 of Commonwealth v. Karen Reed and the finish of direct testimony, as well as the cross-examination of the one and only Jennifer McCabe. Now I ask, why would Kim be wearing a comfort velour suit with hoop earrings and a high bun? It is in the spirit of rebranding. And if Jennifer McCabe can rebrand like no other, I too will channel a rebranded Jennifer. It's J-Lo, Jenny from the Block, circa 2002, singing with Ja Rule, I'm Real. Okay, without further ado, we need to speak to the man that you're all here for, the legal mind who is with us and who breaks things down to tell the behind the scenes, if you will, legal ease and all. Our favorite attorney out of New York, criminal defense mastermind, and man of the hour, our friend, attorney Mark Bederow.
Hello.
Hi, Mr. Bederow.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
It's an interesting day
Oh,
on multiple things, but one of them we don't talk about. But,
yes.
The other one we can certainly talk about. That was very interesting itself.
So interesting. And I want to just start out the gate from a spectator view, right? What did you think about yesterday's Jen? Sympathy, stripes, and all with her shirt, and seeing an entirely what felt like different look for Jennifer McCabe, as well as her demeanor. Everything felt like a 2.0 change up, in my opinion. And you saw that from the moment she walked in. Did you see that difference? And did you feel it was, I don't know, a stylist, someone from the Norfolk DA's office maybe told her that highlights are a good thing and low tone and gentle answers would be the way to go for this jury?
Well, I don't know why she changed her appearance. People do that. It's not going to have any impact on the jury because they didn't see the last appearance, so they have nothing to compare it to. Yeah, she got her hair did. It looks like there's some spray tan, but I mean, whatever. That doesn't, to me, that's really not that meaningful. The larger issue was her attempt on direct examination to be much softer. I mean,
Oh,
in manner, in approach,
yes.
much more, soccer mommy and all of that. And that works to an extent, but
Yeah.
it only works if you can, hold the line on cross. I mean, in lawyers, we tell this to witnesses all the time that you've got to, as best you can. I mean, human nature is still human nature. People do react differently in terms of everything else, but you've got to keep, as best you can, the same demeanor when I'm asking you questions, if it's direct, and the other lawyer on cross, so that you can just you will be more credible when you do that.
Yeah.
She didn't do that, obviously. She wasn't as
Right.
nasty and biting and as she was last time. I mean, you
Mhm.
saw at the end the big speech that you saw a lot of at the last trial, where she just takes over and gives these speeches. But
Yeah.
her demeanor did change from direct to cross. That's not good. The other problem she had with her demeanor is that, and again, whatever the jury remembers, they remember. They're not going to watch it on video. Maybe they write notes about how she looks or doesn't look. But there were certain portions today where her demeanor changed radically. And in particular, when she was being questioned about her interactions with the FBI,
Yes.
she was a deer in the headlights. I mean, she was absolutely stunned, as if she didn't know that that was coming, which to me is, I don't know how that could be the case. But, I mean, we'll go through everything she did, but there's no question the jury will recognize that she acted differently on direct and cross, and that there were certain moments on cross where she looked either scared, other moments where she, like at the end, where she lashed out, and then other moments where she maintained. And she did this the first trial too, where she
Mm-hmm.
maintains a story no matter how ridiculous it is in terms of what she said previously and what's happening now, and she just holds that line and won't give an inch. But I would expect a jury will see right through that, and I think that her credibility this time, at least so far, is much more damaged than it was the first time around.
Yes. And I think that for me, the first time it was this morning, Mr. Bederow, that I got a sense of kind of off-footing with Jen, because Microdots actually did a video, a side by side. One of my viewers had asked, "Hey Kim, could you do trial 1.0 versus trial 2.0 with some responses?" And for me, seeing the rollback, right, the rollback of the tape, it was very similar in certain areas. I mean, you changed and like one word and of one of the very inconsequential words, and they were as similar as one could imagine. Next, though, when she was asked about the FBI or the other agency, and there was this bizarre answer about an ice cream truck coming, like in reference to Kerry, like why she contacted Kerry. Well, if there was an ice cream truck coming when you were a child, you'd call your friend. So there's no difference there. And to me, that was jaw dropping. You are a witness in the retrial and the murder of Officer John O'Keefe, and you're referring the FBI coming to knock at your door as in some correlation in an alternate universe, that this could be just like the ice cream truck coming by, and I called a friend.
No,
What was your thoughts?
well, it's ridiculous, obviously, and particularly the jury's had the benefit of hearing from Kerry Roberts already,
Already.
and really understanding that Kerry Roberts essentially was her stooge, or her follower. I mean, I think that was pretty well established in how her story started to track Jen McCabe's. They had no relationship. They became friends, bonding over this. And the phone calls when the cops are calling, come to my house when you make statements with the police. I mean, it got a connection there that
Yeah.
exists. And then you find out that her first reaction upon being approached by the FBI after lying about who you are, which, whatever, they didn't identify themselves.
Right.
I will tell you this. In my experience, you could be walking down the street. Now, this may not be her experience. I get it, because she's a soccer mom. It's different. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I could walk down the street and say cop, FBI agent, detective. I mean, they stick out like sore thumbs. They just do. FBI agents in particular, because they're a little, more, belts and suspenders, buttoned up. That's just the way they are. But once she learned who they were, and she needs a 10-minute break because she hasn't brushed her teeth, which
Oh,
was ridiculous to say. And her first phone call, well, I should say second phone call. I'll assume she called her husband
yeah.
first,
Yep.
but her second phone call is Kerry Roberts. And if you're going to acknowledge that, which she has to, you might as well, if you want to be credible, tell the whole story, which would be something along the lines of, have they come to you? Did you speak to them? What do they want? And I think what she basically said was, no, I just called her to see, to let her know, and really didn't go beyond that. And that certainly was ridiculous. And then by the time she comes out and lies to them, and let's be clear, let's call a spade a spade. She lied to the FBI, which is a crime if you believe the statement is material. Now, I'm not suggesting any U.S. attorney would prosecute her for the spectacle over the phone calls, particularly where her husband apparently gave her a come to Jesus speech and had her correct it. So
Yep.
this is not about prosecuting her for making false statements. That wouldn't happen on this. But that's not really the point. The point is, when first approached by the FBI, her initial reaction was lie.
Yeah.
Okay. To go inside, panic, call her husband, call Kerry Roberts, call Brian Albert, which is weird, call Peggy O'Keefe, which is weird, and call the Norfolk County DA's office, which I'm sure she hated having to admit. That just looks terrible. I mean, I've got big bad FBI agents here. Mr. DA, what do I do?
Right.
Victim witness advocate, what do I do? So she lied to the FBI. There's just no way around that. And as much as she tried to skirt it and just kind of explain it, the bottom line is she was warned about lying and told them that there were 2 phone calls. In fact, there were 5.
Yeah.
And really, what should not be lost in this is, if her husband doesn't tell her, what are you doing? She would have continued to lie.
Correct.
Clearly. She only did that because of her husband. And then something ironic happened after, chit-chatting with the FBI for a few minutes. She terminated the interview, which is absolutely her right to do.
Right.
But I find the humor in that only because of all the recent public statements about, why doesn't Karen testify? She's afraid. Why doesn't the other guy? He said he would assert the 5th in terms of being sequestered.
Right.
And in essence, what did Jen McCabe do to the FBI after they came to her? She panicked. She made her phone calls. She lied about it. They just said, we want to talk about, we're investigating what happened in the death of John O'Keefe. And her response was, yeah, we're done here, essentially.
Yeah.
I find that interesting. But this was very well done, because by doing that early in the cross and right after she kind of had, the family tree or the organizational chart that you see actually, in FBI buildings with like organized crime families, they have the boss, the underboss, the consigliere, the captain, all that. After Alan spelt out all these bizarre relations and laid it out for the jury, by doing that, what did he establish? How incestuous this whole Canton cabal is, right? These people are all related by something and know everyone, and they have a connection in the Canton Police Department and this, and then they establish, the Karen's not part of that, but they have all these relationships they're comfortable with. But the first time an unfriendly law enforcement agency approaches her, what does she do? Lie, lie, lie.
Right.
So that,
yeah. And the calls, though, Mark, I know that we're not able to speculate on that, but to think, if I try to take a step back and say, I don't know 1.0, I'm just looking at her as, another witness here, you have to wonder and really look at it and say, your husband makes sense. Maybe your best friend, right? Like, oh, I'm a little bit nervous. I can get behind that. But the call to Mrs. O'Keefe, the call to Brian, who we know, as you said, the homeowner of 34 Fairview, and then to the Norfolk DA's office, to me, there's no getting around that. And those 5 calls needed to be made within a 10-minute span, like it would make sense maybe if you reached out afterwards, you could have stopped the interview, but that pre-call, I can't wrap my brain around what What was the rationalization? And we'll never know, but to call Peggy O'Keefe and to call the victim witness advocate at the Norfolk DA's office.
But also connect the dots on who these people are, okay? When you say Peggy O'Keefe and Kerry Roberts, put Kerry Roberts aside for all her other stuff. Those are the timeline people.
Yeah.
Don't underestimate, here comes the FBI, oh shit, what do we do?
Timeline.
I want to know, what's the story or what was prepared. Brian Albert, Brian Albert is involved in everything here, right? He was present at all these interviews, part of these text chains. The real question is, the only phone calls she should have made are to her husband and her lawyer.
Right.
I mean, that would be totally normal.
Yeah.
If she had a lawyer at the time to say, the FBI wants to talk to me, I'm happy to talk to you. But she didn't call her lawyer or have a lawyer. I don't know what time she got her lawyer. But the point is, she ran inside and made these phone calls. And that's not normal. And
No.
just like everything else they've done in this case is not normal. The butt dials around that time period are not normal. The text chain is not normal. What the image that they're selling, okay,
Mhm.
asking the jury to believe is that we're just all good, normal people who had the misfortune of being in this house when our friend ended up dead on the front lawn, and that's fine. But they're acting in a way that is just so much more suspicious, other than the natural reaction, which is grief, anger, and trying to find out by helping the police, not spying on the police. What do they know? What else are they doing? That's not normal.
Right.
Okay. If the FBI is calling you and you have nothing to do with anything, you have every right not to talk to them. I'm not suggesting that. I get calls from people who just say, the FBI, what do you want to do? You don't have to do it. But any lawyer will tell you have two choices. You don't talk to them, or you tell them the truth. And any lawyer is going to explain the 1001 warnings. You can't do this if you're going to speak to them. And every time these law enforcement people come around, they're acting in a way which is, what do they know? Who's saying what? She's telling them this. I don't want to talk on text, having these calls. This is not normal behavior. It's not for people who in theory should just be saying, that's my friend. What do you want to know? What can I do to help? That's not what they did. And so, but what he did in the cross-examination was establish, before he even started questioning about the case, if you believe in like primacy and recency, and a lot of people do with jurors, that right out of the gate, the jury became aware that this grieving woman, who was all choked up, or almost choked up, I guess is really the word, not really, but whatever, however it is you feel, had emotional trauma about finding her friend, wasn't acting like that when it came to the law enforcement people to speak to her or speak to her. Okay. She was in control of what everyone was doing and trying to find out what everyone was doing. And that just doesn't make sense. But the point is, the jury knew before there were any questions about what happened on January 29th, that this purportedly innocent victim woman whose close friend died, soccer mom, before a single question is asked, lied to the FBI about what happened, and ran in for 10 minutes and had a panic fest, calling anyone she could think of to get information or tell them or discuss, what do we do, what do we not do, and was essentially, counseled correctly by her husband to correct the record, if you will, but then say, I don't want to talk to you.
Right.
That's not what she was on direct examination. Okay. That could not be a more diametrical opposite of the person on direct who was telling you about how this impacted her, versus the person on cross who is in, cover your ass mode and gather information mode and find out what's going on. I mean, this is all going to be consistent with the other stuff about tell him he didn't go in the house. They're digging over there at the Asian house. I mean, this is all stuff that doesn't fit the narrative that she's trying to sell.
Yeah, I liked this question, but I feel like I did hear that, and I just want to clear it up. Mr. Bederow, did AJ ask Jennifer McCabe, do you deny it? I feel like he did say that at a couple of times. Did he or no?
I don't remember the exact language or
Okay.
vernacular that he used. I mean, look, crossing someone like her is difficult. And, I mean, I kind of tweeted out about this before she started cross, which is you're going to see, I don't recall, I don't remember. And there are ways that you can try to deal with that. But at some point, it's going to bog it down and you're going to have to pull teeth and extract it. But the problem with McCabe and why I think ultimately her credibility is really, really bad is on top of the FBI thing and some of the other stuff that we can get into, this charade that you saw with, I said, I heard I hit him and I always said that. And I've always known that. And look, the indisputed facts are this. She didn't tell it to Proctor. She didn't tell it to the grand jury.
Correct.
She didn't tell it to the Canton police that you were asked about. Okay. It came later. Now, the jury may not know this, but in the real world, when it became I hit him. It's when they were publicly outed potentially as having, when the phone records and stuff came out. And what it appears happened here, and this is the same with Kerry Roberts. I mean, if you watch the trajectory of their statements, when they started getting some heat publicly, they wanted to push it away. And the best way to push it away is to make Karen guilty. So did I hit him? Did he do this? She'll deal with whatever she's going to deal with. But it really morphed into, oh, yeah, she told me she did it. And when she was confronted with, the 12 instances in her grand jury testimony and says, well, I did say what's in the transcript, which were all questions. Did I hit him? But she also said, I hit him, but it's not there. But I always knew that. And I told it to Lank, he didn't write it down. I told it to Proctor, he didn't write it down. In the grand jury, I guess Lally didn't ask me. He did ask her about what happened. She looks terrible and not credible. And in many ways, if this wasn't so serious, you'd be laughing at how ridiculous her defiance is in saying, I said, I hit him. And I think the best example of all of these examples is the Katie McLaughlin thing, because on direct, I remember the girl EMT, the female EMT.
Yeah.
And here's the video. And who's that? That's her. That's me. And, it's the rule of threes. I hit him. I remember. And then in the grand jury, she's talking obviously about the same conversation. And it's totally different. It's did I hit him? And then she throws out there, she said that too, but also I hit him. I just felt I didn't need to report that. This is the same thing that you saw with like Kerry Roberts in her first statement to the police. Her friend is dead. She wants to help. I don't think anybody seriously doubts that Kerry Roberts loved O'Keefe. Like, that's sincere. I believe that.
Yeah.
But when they spoke to her several hours after, what did she do? She didn't say anything about did I hit him or I hit him, anything about taillights, nothing. This came later.
And she didn't say also about I think he's dead, right? The first phone call alleged by Kerry Roberts was John's dead, but that never was reported until February 1st.
Yeah. The other problem that she has, and this is going to take summation because, some of this in real time is not going to be obvious to the jury, particularly because of the order of witnesses that he's doing this. And what it appears Brennan is doing is kind of just jumbling the witnesses rather than go by logical topic or order to perhaps not, kind of glaze over certain topics that he doesn't want the jury to focus on, but she always comes off as very rehearsed. Okay. It's
Hmm.
very prepared. It does sound similar to the last time, right down to everything she says. But there are obvious facts that she's changed based upon her awareness of what other evidence is. And you saw this at the first trial. I want to see this. What is this? I need to see my statement.
Right.
And some of it is, more obvious than others. I mean, for example, she knows at this point that there's not going to be any dash cam video that's going to show her in the back seat of the car with Karen talking about Google searches.
Right.
Now, that's the previous story. We were sitting in the car praying. The story this time was she was very clear. No, we were out of the car. Because if I'm out of the car, there's no dash cam to pick it up, perhaps.
Right.
But there is a statement that she made to the state police, and it's very clear. And the problem she has, and if I were the defense, I'd be calling this witness in my case, even for 5 minutes, to destroy her on this point. It's not even so much that she said I was in the car, I wasn't in the car, because that can be a minor detail.
Yeah.
But the problem is she poured it on too thick by adding extraneous detail, which means if it's not true, that's intentional, which now you start getting more devious. So if you remember, the statement to the police was not just that we were sitting in the back of the car, we were sitting there holding hands.
Praying.
We were sitting there praying.
Yes.
I mean, in the car, when the ambulance was, I mean, whatever the exact words were, there were all of those specifics. But at the time, I thought that was the biggest example of her obviously fixed testimony. But then the real bombshell with her are the texts while at 34 Fairview and what she allegedly perceived with Karen's car. And
yes,
now the jury has not yet heard the accident reconstruction people who are going to tell you, we got her at 1231 going in this speed and this whatever, and that's got to be the key cycle and all that techno mumbo jumbo that most people don't want to hear. But the bottom line, in the first trial, they had no fixed time, and one of the times that Lally fixed it to, if you remember this, was, that's right, based on McCabe's testimony about the text. That's right.
Yeah.
You now know that they're locked into 1231.
Yeah.
Because of what they claim is the proper cycle. Yesterday, Whiffen already torched them on that because John O'Keefe was using the phone at 1232. I mean, it was open with Face ID. Somebody manually took it out of his pocket and somebody manually locked it. I don't think anybody's going to say that he was lying dead on the lawn and somebody, Karen or otherwise, came up, held the phone to his face. And I mean, that's just bonkers, right?
Wild. Yep.
So if he was using the phone at 1232 and the accident was at 1231 and the medical testimony is going to establish that he was incapacitated immediately, including from a medical examiner that should be a prosecution witness, but is now going to be a defense witness from the first trial. When they all say that he was incapacitated
immediately, yes.
Well, then honestly, it's already over, because if that phone is being used 1 minute after or 30 seconds after, it could be 10 seconds after, it doesn't matter. Dead men tell no tales. It's like the famous Disney line, but dead men don't use cell phones either. Incapacitated men certainly don't. So you already knew coming into today, the fact that the phone was used at 1232 is almost a full kneecapping of their case. It just is.
Yeah.
Then you get Jen, and here comes, well, instead of the 5 calls, the 5 texts, and the 5 times I looked out, well, now I only remember 2. And how convenient that the 2 she remembers occurred at 1227 and 1231. And 1231, of course, would be right before the accident when she's near the flagpole, right? I mean, as far as the other ones, well, I don't remember. Okay, already. Now, remember, the first jury on direct and the early part of cross, they don't know this. They don't know what
Right.
happened here. So when he starts cross-examining her, and this is like extracting teeth, I don't remember. Well, if I said that, I'm sorry. Well, it turns out the jury hears that just a year ago, you said that you looked out the door 4 or 5 times, and that in essence, the last text you sent was the last time you saw the car pulling away, and that was 12:45, which is 14
Correct.
minutes, 12:31, the Wi-Fi connecting, all of that can't be. So the way that they try to fix this is, well, we'll just have her say, I don't remember. Okay. And there's a lot of this going on here. Okay. And the question is a jury going to see through this? And is the defense in summation going to say something about, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him? Has to be 3, right? Well,
Right.
that's why you heard Nuttall say, well, I was wrong when I said 2 at the first trial. It was actually 3. And I remembered that after I met with Brennan and Tully. Well, put that in the context of how Nuttall got to 3, and he says, well, now I know that I'm certain that's what had happened. It's all about synchronizing with McCabe.
Right.
And her problem is the timeline. So what do they do with her when they prep her for trial? She just forgets all of these text messages, all of these things, but she remembers the 2 that fit the DA's timeline.
Correct. Correct.
And but the jury now knows that a year ago she said, I was out there 3 or 4 times texting, and the timeline is all screwed up. So you're 7 days into this, okay?
We are.
You're not even done with this witness. There's probably 2 hours left, but already the jury knows that she lied to the FBI, which is bad. I mean, there's her instinct was to lie to law enforcement that are not, the Canton police or the Massachusetts State Police. They already know
Right.
that. They already know that she radically changed her story on I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Mm-hmm.
They already know that her testimony about the text message and the timeline has been altered. They already know, and now they know why, that this guy Nuttall, all of a sudden, he can't remember puffy coats and other stuff. And my memory's better now than it was then. But they now know that all of a sudden, after meeting with the prosecution team shortly before trial, he has a very specific memory of 3 times I hit him. They already know that Kerry Roberts, you can call it perjury or not. We don't have to argue over the legal definition of perjury.
Yep.
She gave inaccurate, materially inaccurate, whether deliberate or otherwise, testimony to a grand jury, and nobody did anything about it or cared. They know that her story went from I don't know anything about taillights and admissions to I hit him or did I hit him, to meeting with
Yeah.
Jen McCabe, giving interviews at her house, and all that stuff. They already know that Ian Whiffen has admitted that he can't exclude the possibility that the phone didn't go into the house. He has
Yep.
admitted that the 86 steps, whatever, if they went in that direction as they may have gone, would put him in the house.
Mm-hmm.
They completely butchered the evidence regarding the temperature drop with his kind of weird experiments, and they have no answer for why the temperature drop essentially flatlined for 4 hours, which suggests it went somewhere else. Garage, maybe?
Correct.
I don't know. They're stuck with the fact that Ian Whiffen has the phone moving at 12:32 when John O'Keefe should be incapacitated, right? They're also stuck with the fact that although Ian Whiffen says that, in my opinion, the Google search did not occur at 2:27, that's standing on that opinion, but he's readily acknowledging that he's doing this test on his own software. Okay, not Celebrate, his own software.
The ArtX, yes.
Yeah, I mean, whatever, that's fine. But the real important part about, at least as it relates to the cell phone, is that he conceded that Axiom is a very credible, reliable software in this world, and they still show it. And that
Still shows. Yes.
the only reason Celebrite doesn't show it is because I made changes that were later cleared by the Celebrite team after the trial. So
Right.
that's the state of the DA case in their case in chief, almost a week or a little more than a week through it. You've heard nothing from the defense yet.
Right.
You haven't heard multiple experts who are going to say that he was incapacitated. You haven't heard from Green, who's going to say, I disagree with Ian Whiffen. And again, can't have a battle of the experts here. Prosecution has to win compellingly. They have to win. You haven't heard from the ARCA people, obviously. So if you look at this a week into it, this is a very clunky performance because the prosecution's case is always supposed to be strongest in their case in chief, obviously.
Right. Yeah. It was bizarre. And especially I thought with Whiffen's testimony, not to get out of kind of the today's testimony in entirety, but Whiffen really, in my opinion, Mr. Bederow, contradicted himself, worked well, answered the questions that Bob Alessi had, given him in a manner in which every single time Mr. Alessi set something up, he confirmed it. He confirmed that in our report that you did not present to this jury does include that Officer John O'Keefe could have been in that house or
Well,
in that garage,
that's true. But in that situation, the bad guy, if you will, is not Whiffen. That's Brennan. Okay. Whiffen creates a report. He creates this chart. Now, I'm not sure this question was asked. It could have been. I don't think Bob did ask this question. It doesn't matter that he didn't. But there could have been some questioning about who decided what goes into your timeline that doesn't include what's in the report. Okay. Was it you? I mean, and I don't think, I think it's pretty clear who it probably was. It would be the prosecutor. Okay. Because they don't want.
I found it, though, appalling that he didn't know that 32 degrees was freezing in Fahrenheit in the United States of America when we're talking about a blizzard and we're talking about, the surrounding and circumstances of a battery in an iPhone, the consistency and if it's inside or outside. And that is something that is easily looked up. We know that it was between 18 and 22 degrees on January 28th, up until midnight and then until 6 o'clock that next morning. We also know that there was between 40 and 50 mile per hour wind gusts, Mr. Bederow. This is all huge and has impact, seeing as Officer John O'Keefe was not properly clothed. It's not as though he was wearing, like you were saying, a North Face jacket or something of that nature that he had his phone within. He was wearing a light hoodie, an orange t-shirt, and a pair of jeans. No scarf, no gloves, no hat. And where this phone was found, per Kerry Roberts, was in his mid-back. Not in his pocket, not in his lower back, but how in God's green earth would Officer John O'Keefe's phone have landed in the mid-upper back to the middle, as she recounted? That is weird.
Well, I think the argument speaks for itself. The argument, obviously, from a defense standpoint, is because somebody put it there, who maybe didn't think this through so carefully. I mean, I will acknowledge, and I think most reasonable people would, that if he was hit by a car, if the phone was in his pocket, it most likely would stay there, or maybe it would. I mean, I know you can lose a shoe or shoes. That does happen.
A shoe, yep.
Yeah, I mean, that does happen. Or if it was in his hand, it presumably would kind of go flying and not land under the middle of his back. That doesn't seem to make much sense. So, I mean, the point is, Whiffen needed to be a knockout witness for them, and he wasn't. I mean, they got points from him that they're going to use and cite. I get it, but they need him to be overwhelming. And you could make a credible argument. I'm not sure I would do this if I were the defense, but you could actually have a serious discussion amongst lawyers to say, are we even calling green? Now, I
Oh,
think the answer is yes. I think the answer
yeah,
is yes. But my point is, Whiffen has given them doubt, or I should say reasonable doubt, on very important points, such as whether the phone went in the house. Now, it's his
correct.
opinion. It's his opinion that it probably didn't, but he can't exclude it, and he can't tell you because it's within the range. And when he tries to blame the location accuracy was low, if you remember that,
Yes,
what's the first reason he said that could be a basis for that? It could be inside in a
correct.
covered area, which again he doesn't know, but that's like a fastball down the middle of the plate for the defense. The location analysis could be a larger circle, if you will, a larger grid or whatever you want to call it, because it might have been inside. So he didn't knock out anything, and the fact that the experiment that he did at the end, um, I don't know why he didn't do the exact same entries, by the way, that were done, like Hoslong to die in the cold and Hakamak Sports. I mean, I don't know that would change anything or not, but I mean, if I'm a juror, why are we entering, military times and things? Why don't we replicate
Yeah,
the exact search, and why don't we do it, on Celebrate? But whatever.
yeah, questions that are unanswered. Again, I did want to give flowers to Attorney Alessi with those specific questions, like you just mentioned, Mr. Bederow, of that could be reasonable doubt, right? Or that is a reasonable doubt. And I said, oh, to weave that in to your questioning and to, just say that, to have a jury hear that and register it, just chef's kiss, 10 out of 10 in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I mean, I think the witness was always vulnerable on these points. I mean, it's not like new information they didn't know, but the examination was done in a way to extract exactly what they needed, and he did it in a very methodical way in which he didn't need to be nasty or anything like that.
No.
And Whiffen, to his credit, seems like a gentleman. It was nothing nasty, and I'm not one of those people who think he's not lying or anything. I think he may have not gotten all the analysis correct, or the analysis he did leaves doubt in certain areas. I mean, I don't. It's no more, no less. But either way, if you're the prosecution, I don't think you should be thrilled with where it stands after he left the stand.
I also found it very interesting that he let us know, because I did not hear this or did not register with me in 1.0, was that he was a police officer, right? That he had worked, and now 80% of his cases are for prosecution and law enforcement, and that he himself had a badge, and though that may not have really anything to do with this case, it does give you just a history, and providing in someone's entire history, you're able to form your opinions, I feel, in a more full context.
Yeah, and look, all these things are true, but I keep going back to, I don't know why Whiffen testified before McCabe. I mean, I guess the idea was that Whiffen would be so compelling and just shock and awe the jury into a preemptive strike that this Google search is nonsense and it's dead and buried. And the reality is, it's not dead and buried, even if the jury's impression right now is, well, he seemed really solid on that. With what you're seeing about Jen McCabe today and all of her issues, it's going to be less. And what's coming tomorrow, the text chain. Okay.
For
And
Friday, yeah.
all of a Friday, whatever it is, all of that kind of stuff. So, the needle is going to tilt even more. I just don't know why they would do Whiffen and then go straight to McCabe. That just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, for their case in chief, for how they were setting up their witnesses, a little bit odd. Really, we can't. I'm not understanding that quite myself either. But I did want to say that when I went on court TV earlier this week, I was on with Joe Krowski one segment, and he said that he didn't want to start getting mean to people, but then continued to say that, like, you're a flat earther, or you have no brain if you are going to say that 227 is in play. And to that, I say, wait, wait and see. And that I was not compelled by the presentation, and nor was Ian Whiffen, to a degree of scientific certainty, because he wouldn't testify to it. It was his opinion. And I
Well,
am allowed to have an opinion that differs with you, to the Commonwealth supporters, without having to attack people. It's
well,
like ridiculous.
well. Look, Krowski knows better than that, and what I mean by that is this: it is clearly Whiffin's opinion that the Google search did not occur at 227. Okay,
Yep.
and presumably Jessica Hyde will say the same thing. Let's also not, or should consider, the fact they didn't examine the phone. They examined the data that they were given, whatever
Right.
that is. So, but the defense has an expert who's going to say, in my opinion, it is made at 227. It was manually deleted. There's only one deleted, record out of 4,500. And so a lawyer like him is smart enough to know this is a reasonable doubt issue. And again,
Correct.
this is an issue that the prosecution must carry the day overwhelmingly. Can't be any doubt. Where for the defense, obviously they want to establish that Jen McCabe made the Google search at 227. But if she didn't, it's still a house money issue. Their toes are still tapping. There's a million things that are still going to establish reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
Where this is a, you know, bet the farm issue for the DA. If the jury has any doubt, so I don't know what time that search was. Well, the case is over, because if they seriously consider the possibility that that search was made at 227, then the entire prosecution explanation for these people, all of them, frankly, goes out the window. So I'm
Yeah,
not
that was
surprised.
huge too in his cross, when at that moment I felt like it was a jaw drop when Mr. Alessi asked him, "Do you understand the implications if 227 happened?" Now, before there was the objection and sustained by Judge Beverly Cannoni, Ian Whiffen immediately said, "Of course I do." Now, the jury, in my opinion, if you picked that up, like, if you got that of course I understand the implication if in fact this search did occur.
I, I,
And yeah,
I, I don't think there is any person, even some of the like real lunatics and whack jobs, who just would tell you that, Karen's guilty because that's my opinion and I don't want to hear anything different. Whatever. There's
mhm,
always some of those. Most of those people, if not all, would at least concede, hypothetically, that if Jennifer McCabe searched at 2:27 a.m., that the case is over, and that people associated with the people in the house knew about something very, very bad. Doesn't mean who did what, but that
right.
they were aware of something bad, and they have all lied about it, which of course is the death penalty for this case. So, and the jury will know, at some point soon, that the Google search is not going to be looked at in isolation. I mean, look at the timing of it. It's just a couple of minutes after the butt dials from the Bryans and all of this other stuff, and the family text chain and all the other things that we've talked about their, bizarre behavior. And
Yeah.
it really lends itself to an argument to the jury to say, I don't know what they, never mind third party culprit stuff. We don't know what happened. We know from the science she didn't do it. That's science controls. But as far as what these other people are doing, I don't know who did what, who knew what, but these people were aware of what happened to John O'Keefe and then came into court, took oaths, looked all of you in the eye, and lied about it.
Right.
I mean, at that point, the case is obviously over.
Yes, 110%. Now, after the FBI situation where we have the ice cream truck and then the lies to the feds, there was another moment that, again, Jen's demeanor was pretty good while she could hold it. I was actually got to give credit where credit is due. It is very different than what I saw last season.
Her
But
demeanor, let me just for 1 second.
yeah,
Her demeanor so far in this trial, I don't think she's credible, don't get me wrong. And there were some serious problems with her demeanor that we talked about. But in a general sense, her demeanor and willingness not to just lash out and attack and utter these pre-canned lines is far improved than
yes,
the first time. That's, I mean, you got to call it like you see it. That's true.
absolutely. But there, we do see the moments that it slips. But when she was responding to Alan Jackson asking her, and again, she was picking her battles much better than 1.0. We agree on that as well. But when he asked about the separation of her family on the morning of January 29th, 2022, and Jen really could not get to a place and continued to bat back with, there was no reason that my family should have been separated and interviewed. We were family. We were traumatized, plus Brian Higgins, but I digress. My point, or how I would perceive this, Mark, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that is huge. The inability for her to not accept that if it was if it was me, or 99% of the rest of Norfolk County and the United States of America, there would have been a search in that house and everyone would have gone down to the police department for a recorded interview. What happened that morning with that family is not policy and procedure of Mass State Police, Canton Police, of any department that I know of, that where there is a police officer down who is unresponsive, the man in the snow on your front lawn, okay? And you are all just communicating with each other, sitting around a table. A cop that is one of your family friends comes in, takes some statements that allegedly maybe a couple of you were in different rooms, but in all, you were in the comfort of your sister's home and the homeowner's home, and had visitors and friends over, and you gave your statements and went on your merry way. That is not how it occurs in this country on any normal basis, right? And she doesn't get it because that is her experience in Norfolk County and in Canton. And I think that was a shot that she may have not known that she was shooting herself in the foot with that one.
See, I think she disagree a little bit. I think she totally gets it. Okay. And the fighting and pushing back about all that is the righteous indignation that she's attempting to sell, which is, we did nothing wrong. I found my friend in the yard and he was my friend, and we did nothing wrong. Leave us alone. We were all trying to comfort each other and figure out what happened. I mean, I agree. What the cops did was ridiculous. The inappropriate level and manner of investigation. But I think what she's trying to suggest is we're all victims and there's nothing wrong with this because we did nothing wrong. And so what I would do if I were the defense, I would use that and juxtapose that in summation or even on cross, for example, with her demeanor around the FBI. Why is that? Why is it different Why were you so willing to welcome the cops into your house, tell them everything, everything's cool, we're all going to talk about this, we don't need to do this. But when other investigators who clearly have at least a more neutral view of what is going on, your instinct, again, you did nothing wrong, you just found your friend on the lawn, he was my friend and I'm traumatized. Your instinct was to lie, panic, and call the people that you called and then say, we're done here. So, I mean, I think, to me, the larger point with the way the cops treated them is to juxtapose it on how she acts when it comes to the FBI, how it comes to when they're talking to each other on their private texts. The,
Mm,
the guy, okay, every time, she's telling you, and I'm sure it's her friend. I don't doubt that. But the reality is, when she called 911, he was a man in the snow and a guy in the snow. That's what he was. Okay. When they're texting about him, he's the guy. But when you're getting cross-examined in court and the heat gets turned up, it becomes, he's one of my closest friends and we did nothing wrong. And, we're traumatized. And I have a vivid memory of her saying, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, notwithstanding the comical degree to which the evidence suggests the exact opposite of what she's
right.
looking at the jury saying, that's what I've always said. I mean, it's almost, again, I said it earlier, it would be silly if it wasn't so serious. So the way they were treated by the Canton cops and the way she was comfortable with all that versus how she acted privately and with the FBI, to me, is the real point to show what's going on here. Because this is not victim like behavior. I mean, even some of the other texts where they want to talk about what's going on and they're saying, I don't want to talk about it on text. Your friend was killed. You're talking to your family and friends, all with a common interest in finding out what happened to your friend. You've
Mm-hmm.
all determined none of us had anything to do with this. We know that. We're upset. Let's find out what happened. Why are they talking in code and saying we can't talk about this on text? And go send Matt McCabe to take pictures of where the cops are and what they're doing over here, and I'll go do a drive by, and she's telling them everything. I mean, you just
Yeah.
go on with all this stuff, and you juxtapose that with these speeches and soliloquies that she gives in court from time to time, saying, that was my friend. I mean, it is a stark contrast.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Now, Ashley, this is a question that a lot of people have had. Mr. Bederow, did you notice that, like, she's saying the quality of that 911 call that the CW okayed was terrible. I sure hope the defense can play a cleaner version. And there was other people asking about the speed. Did you notice
So
the speed change?
I don't know, but in listening to it, it did sound hard to hear and it did feel a little sped up. I don't know that that's the case or not,
Yeah.
but it did not sound very crisp and full. And if it turns out that they have another version that's better, I absolutely would try to introduce that. And more importantly, I'd want to know, outside the presence of the jury, what the hell is going on here. I mean, this is, you
Well,
know,
and last in 1.0, they ended up the defense used what? Karen Reed's voicemail that she
mhm.
had left Officer John O'Keefe. And for whatever reason, that was far more audibly pleasing and clear for the viewers and the jury, no, for the jury to really hear what was happening. And you can hear, ironically enough, the windshield wipers. Do you remember that? And you can hear whispering from the front of the car. And that is what I recall the
Yeah.
defense utilized.
Yeah. I mean, which is purportedly the call to her sister.
Yes.
The
Yep.
one the one she told the FBI who she was.
Oh. And ironically enough, now another interesting layer here is that we have another sister, Denise, who Dee Dee today in the family timeline of friends and family. that she was involved and writing down the timeline. So now we have Coco's house that this tragic incident occurs. We have Jen being directed by, allegedly, per her account, Peggy O'Keefe, that she needs to complete this timeline, her and Kerry Roberts. And if we recall from 1.0, Kerry Roberts said that and Jen McCabe said it was because it was going to, quote, take a while to get this done. Meaning what? The case for Karen Reed to be either plead out or go to prison, per her thoughts, and that she wanted to make sure that there was going to be a timeline of these events. But as I have always said, it doesn't make sense that these women who had completely different accounts and different timelines. They shouldn't have been doing this together. They shouldn't have known what one another knew, right? Because you are witnesses in what became a manslaughter case, and then upped charges in June of 2022 to a homicide case. And you people are cross-pollinating each other's stories to the point where Kerry Roberts gets onto a grand jury on the stand and says, "Oh, well, I heard that Karen Reed said to Jennifer McCabe to
Timeline,
Google hypothermia."
timeline said.
The timeline told me. What are we doing here?
So I agree 100% with everything you just said. And I mean, the first question, of course, is where the hell is the timeline? I mean, I've been noting that for a long
Yes.
time, but putting that issue aside, we also don't have the details of how did information make it into the timeline. So if something happened at a certain time, Kerry says this, Jen says this, and then let's work through it and come up with an answer, and that goes into the timeline.
Right.
Or does it say Jen thinks this, Kerry thinks this? Like as you said, cross-pollinated is a good verbiage for what's going on here. You don't know, and the whole point is that their stories essentially come from a hive mind. Really,
Yeah.
they're like their brains have been melded into one larger blob of information, and who the hell knows what saw what, who came from where, who originated it, did it influence the other one? And then you find out both of them start changing their stories and moving into all these things.
Correct.
And to this day, it boggles the mind how this was not disclosed to the defense, because it had to be in the prosecution, and that includes the police. Their their possession, custody, or control. I mean, there's no way that they didn't know in speaking to all of these people that they had created a timeline. And of course, any sensible prosecutor, certainly any ethical prosecutor who would interview any of these people, Kerry Roberts, Jen McCabe, or even Peggy O'Keefe, they would have learned that there was a timeline, okay? And any prosecutor motivated for the truth, not, convicting any one person, would want to say, well, we need to talk about this, okay? We need to know, did you cross-pollinate or create a hive mind? Why were you doing this? Where is it? What does it look like? And, you start getting into things that don't make sense. So, for example, prosecutors don't just put witnesses in a grand jury, okay, in a murder case,
Right.
where there's a dead cop on the lawn of another cop, okay? They interview witnesses and they prep them, and they go over what they're going to testify in the grand jury, okay? So I'm here to tell you, although I don't have actual knowledge, it is impossible that way back when, that Lally did not sit down with Kerry Roberts and interview her and talk about da 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 da. And when she basically said, "I'm going to testify," I heard Karen ask Jen to do this Google search, any sane prosecutor, hell, any first-year prosecutor would ask, how do you know that? Okay, there is no way this did not come up before she testified in the grand jury. Okay, there's just no way that Lally was comfortable with the fact that, well, they wrote it on a timeline, so that's what happened. Any prosecutor would say, who told you? Do you know? Now, Massachusetts is interesting because, unlike New York, they allow hearsay in a grand jury, and that's why one of the reasons why they shouldn't, by the way. But it doesn't matter because the hearsay is inadmissible at trial. And any prosecutor would want to know. And then what happens is they use it in the grand jury. By the time they get to the first trial, this whole like trial 1.0, 2.0, I can't with that. I'm sorry. I find that just, I know everyone says it. It makes me want to throw up. I can't with that. It's a retrial, but that's end of lawyer rant. By the time it gets to the first trial, the 2:27 a.m. Google search is going to be as critical an issue for the prosecution as could possibly exist, right? They need to make it not be. So if they had two witnesses, okay, if they had two witnesses who could corroborate that happened, then you damn well better believe they would have introduced evidence that two witnesses heard it. Okay? Right. Because remember, it's a statement of Karen, according to them, that's admissible.
Yes.
Okay? And when Kerry testified at the first trial, they never asked her.
Right.
The reason they never asked her is because they saw the FBI 302. That's the report that they would have gotten. Okay. So they knew right then and there, oh shit, like it's not true. She flat out told the FBI, as you heard at trial, never heard it.
Yeah.
Now, so what does the DA do? They take this testimony from the grand jury and they just flush it down the memory hole, like it never happened.
Right.
What they should have done was said, what the hell's going on here? Okay, this is what an ethical prosecutor would do. They would speak to Kerry Roberts and say, can you explain, what happened here?
Yeah.
But they memory holed it. They should have gotten her a lawyer, is what they should have done. They knew she was going to get crossed. If she was going to get crossed, she didn't get crossed the first time. That was obviously a mistake, clearly, based on what you learned about her the second time. But an ethical prosecutor concerned with the truth and all of this would have said, I'm not comfortable with this. I need to know what's going on. And you know what? Before I even call you as a witness, you need counsel to make sure we're all okay with this.
Right.
But in that place, they just flush it down the memory hole, call the witness, and stay away from the ugly topic and hope it doesn't rear itself on cross-examination. That's how the sausage is made in Norfolk.
Wow. And in such a juxtaposition to, interestingly enough, of the 227 pages of Jennifer McCabe's grand jury testimony, right? Where over 12 times she is asked that specific or in some way by Adam Lally, she does not mention it in April of 2022. Yet, and she says it's because I wasn't specifically asked that question. I only ask and answer what I was asked. Yet, juxtapose that with Kerry Roberts, who is telling what she didn't hear, but heard via hearsay from her friend.
When you're asked by a prosecutor in a grand jury, what happened next? Or what did she say then? I have news for you. That's being asked what was said. And that's a trigger to say, oh, by the way, Mr. Lally, did I forget to mention that she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him? Her testimony today on that was comical. It was absurd. And that's why I think her credibility, amongst other reasons, is probably mortally wounded because she picked a hell of a hill to die on. But I mean, they have no choice because she didn't say I hit him.
Correct.
And then she later did. So, and this came up the first time. But what I would like to see the defense do this time, I mean, they did not tie the knot, close the circle
Yeah.
first trial, and I never understood why, and I hope they do it this time. Okay,
Okay.
one of the cops you heard that she didn't mention. I hit him. I hit him. I hit him. That he got it wrong. His length. You need to ask him, and he's going to say what she told me.
Is in my report.
You're going to do it with Proctor, and never mind the whole Proctor thing. Hey, I wrote what they told me. Same with Good. Hey, I wrote what they told me. All of them, okay? Because her answer is always, I know what it was said. I know what I know, and they're all wrong. They're all wrong. And you didn't ask me the right questions, and I answered the questions I mean, when this is put in context in a summation, which they need to do, whether you get an hour or not, is you need to spend time on the witnesses who matter. And obviously Jen, is a big one. Nuttall, it shouldn't be a big one, but the DA is trying to make him a big one.
The hero. Yes.
You've got to deal with this. I hit him. And then, figure out how you're going to talk about the out of context statements where Karen regurgitates some version of this, whatever it is, but, it's not really in context. And they're trying to use the videos to explain the shortcomings of the witnesses who are clearly not credible.
Correct. Yeah, 110%. I agree with that too, Mr. Bederow. Now, I thought it was interesting that if there are signs, or if you believe in some kind of karmic justice, to see a Jennifer McCabe take the stand at 227 yesterday, and then to have her refer to the 227-page grand jury testimony, I said, oh, I was like, wow, ain't that something? And it was back to the time that we were speaking about her text messages, because this was huge. The Officer John O'Keefe, from backtracking now, if you will, from every single time she texted Officer John O'Keefe in the first trial, she said she was up. She saw Karen Reed's black Lexus LX 570. And then she went and sat back down. Well, we know that Adam Lally started the first trial with a time of 12:45 based on what? Jennifer McCabe's timeline. It backtracked by the end of that trial to the 12:31 approximately a.m. And now that she has changed her testimony to fit the last time, allegedly, that she saw she saw Karen Reed's Lexus, would have been at that 12:31. But it is remarkable, because this feels like the first time, and correct me of what you heard, but I never heard her say that she saw the vehicle even further from the flagpole down. Like, now we're going at the Asian neighbor's house.
So I made an interesting observation today, and I don't really take notes when I watch this, but if something is mildly important or to think about, the first thing is you're going to see in summation, and they'll come back to this point after this guy Welcher testifies that it was 12:31 based on this. That's another fastball down the middle of the plate for Allen in summation to say, how convenient that what Jennifer McCabe just happens to remember is at 12:31, by the flagpole, not, the 12:45 stuff that she admits she said previously. Here's the interesting point that I wrote a note down.
Yeah.
If the car was there at 12:31 at the flagpole,
yep,
John O'Keefe is found by the flagpole.
Correct.
Okay. So that means logically what is it, 60 something feet that she allegedly goes in reverse at 25?
62. Yep. 62 feet at 24.2.
That means the screeching, if you will, comes from the neighbor's house past the fire hydrant and would have, launched him there.
Yeah.
That means if That means if she saw the car at the flagpole at 12:31, it had to be after the
Correct.
accident, okay? Because the flagpole area is going to be where the car ends.
Yes.
Okay. So that now, which means if she
Oh,
could see the tire tracks and she could, why didn't she see the tail light? Which, by the way, the right tail light is what would be exposed. Now,
yes.
if it's 12:31 right before the accident, the
Uh-huh.
problem, two problems then. The first problem is you're looking at her at 12:31. You can't be that far away. How do you not hear it?
Hmm.
But the other problem is if that's before the accident, then John O'Keefe's in the wrong location. Because if it starts at the flagpole, you're going to be past the driveway. And John O'Keefe is going to be on the other side of the driveway.
Right.
She completely screwed them with what she claims she saw at 12:31, and if the car was at the flagpole. Because if it's after the accident, it doesn't make sense, and if it's before the accident, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Oh, that's huge. That is huge. And my takeaway was if she was looking, if it was more than twice, which she couldn't confirm or deny, she could only say that she knew for sure it was the two. Now you have put that in my brain, and I'm going to have to rattle that around because that is absolutely genius. But I was thinking, even if she had gotten up just one more time, if three of the six, her eyes would have been looking in that direction. We know that Karen is not there. And you had firmly testified to seeing a large black SUV. You saw a wave in the road depicting tire marks all the way across the street. And you're going to tell me, Lady Jane, that you didn't see a tall man, a 6'2", 217-pound friend of yours when your eyes were drawn in that direction. That would have been the only direction she got up to look and see out that door. And against what? The snow was already starting to stick. You would have seen it. It is a flat lawn, and that doesn't jive either.
You would have
It's never gonna.
you would have seen it, and look, somebody would have heard it. Okay, throwing a car in reverse at they're claiming is full depression essentially of the gas pedal at whatever
74%, but still, yep.
that's flooring it. Okay, let's
Yeah.
call it what it is. Going in reverse, it's not even on a straight line because it's a little curve there, a little grade, whatever it is, and smashing some guy. And what did we say the lawn was, like 50 feet maybe? It's quiet outside. I mean, how is it that not a single person would have heard it? Or how did nobody see it before, not before, but during or the aftermath of it? Because they kept peeking outside. It does
Correct.
it doesn't make any sense that this could be. And I don't remember the exact timeline of the other stuff, but I know they were asking her about when the brother Nagel, his ride was there, and how that would have affected things, because if Higgins's Jeep was there, and how that could have factored in. But the bottom line is, even when they were being, or she, not they, was being asked, when you're looking at the flagpole, I mean, it's obvious what Alan was establishing, that you would be looking right at
Correct.
the lawn and even then, look how she fought on that. Well, I'm
Yes.
not there. I'm not looking. I mean, I think this was the testimony in the first trial, where somebody said, "Well, what if there was like an alligator on the yard? Would you know? Would you?" And that was sustained. It was a ridiculous example, but it's also a good example. You see things in front of you across 50 feet. I mean, I'm looking 50 feet, but I can see there's a computer, a chair, a dog, and other things.
Oh, I have one too right there. Yeah.
That I'm not looking at.
Yes.
And she just fights on those points, and I'm sitting there watching, saying she's not going to agree that the lawn is the same. And then I started wondering, is she going to like comment on the dead spots in the lawn, that wasn't there. I don't know, like the picture of the lawn that it's missing like half the grass in the front yard. She's fighting on such trivial points that it just, it doesn't look good. And you have to wonder, how is a jury going to see, again, on direct, how warm and soccer mom it is, but on cross, when you're fighting over this little stuff.
I will say there was that moment too with Brennan, though, that I said, oh, right. She's on direct, and Hank Brennan is establishing again her vision and her vision field, seeing Karen Reed's Lexus move up. And she sees it first as, straight as a crow, or the crow, whatever the frig it is, the crow straight, whatever. And flows right. Yeah, the crow flies
that's
straight.
If the crow fries, that's bad. Crow fries. Straight line, no road.
Straight line from the door, right? Good. And then moves up, and then moves up again. Now he asked, though, this, I said, oh, clutch your pearls, Kimberly Jean. He says, why didn't you go out and see what was up, right? Like, why didn't you go out and just check on your friends? And she goes, why would I? And looked at, and I go, oh, because to me, that was a question that was not clearly something that maybe they had talked about, because her response, I felt she did not see that coming. And then she laughed about it at like, oh, I was just kidding. But you saw in that moment someone say, why would I? Now I ask, why would you call as many times as you did? But if they were just sitting right outside your sister's house, wouldn't you just open the door and go, hey guys, what's going on? You coming in?
I think you also have to put it in context of common sense and people,
Yeah.
Put yourself what they were doing that night, and surround yourself with normal people. Okay. So you're at a bar. Hey, we're going to go over to, our house, the Albert house.
Yep.
We know there's going to be a blizzard. Okay. Let's have Karen and John come. Okay. First of all, Karen's not really that close with any of these people. She's a hanger on. She's a John or nothing, right? She's not going on her own. They are friendly with John, but Brian Albert says, I don't really know him. I mean, Chris Albert's not there. That's kind of the one he knows the most, right? Is Chris Albert, his neighbor?
Well, yeah, but he just got his phone number that day.
Which is interesting. So in essence, though, okay, so Jen says, come over, whatever. They're not that close. It feels to me maybe she's kind of pouring it on thick. But the point is this. These are adults in their 40s and 50s. Okay. So you're partying, whatever. He says he's going to come over. He texts, I'm coming over. You almost hear whatever. And then you see the car out front, and are you coming? And then at some point he stops responding and the car is gone. Why would you keep, as a grown woman, just keep calling and keep texting as if it really matters if he comes to your party? I mean, I get it. You said or two, are you coming? Where are you?
Of course.
Why the constant, like, where's John? Where's John? Where's John? It feels, I don't know that this means anything, but it just feels like another one of these unnatural and weird interactions that I would expect young people or teenagers to be more texting, calling a grown man again and again and again. They're grown people. They've been drinking all night. There's a blizzard coming. They blew you off.
And that hasn't really made a lot of sense in my brain, of just literally trying to put it together as if it was something that is plausible, that makes sense, that you would say, oh, okay. And what happened next? This makes sense. In this case, there is not, you don't have those moments.
People are saying, I mean, I just looked over, I don't usually do this, but they're talking about the butt dials. Yes, I'm aware that she has alleged that they're butt dials, but that doesn't help her. That's worse, because you have a better chance of explaining things that I was just, I really wanted him to come over and I was just trying to find him. By calling them butt dials over the course of what, how many was it? It's like anywhere from 5 to 10 butt dials over the course of however many minutes.
Yeah, like 18 minutes.
She's butt dialing and texting at the same time, doing what they're doing. And I'm not a gambling person or a statistician, but I would suggest that the odds of her butt dialing that many times in the manner that she described, at least the last time, did she describe the butt dials this time? I don't even remember. Maybe I don't think I was paying attention then. I don't know. But the odds of that happening are whatever the number is that's less than zero. I mean, that's just statistically off the chart.
And then you also throw into the equation Sarah Levinson's testimony, the friend of baby Brian. She says that Jennifer McCabe's phone was on the charger the entire time and that she was going over and she said she went over and checked it multiple times. And I don't know about you, Mr. Bederow, but I have never butt dialed with my phone on a charger.
No.
And Sarah Levinson, in my opinion, was likely the most sober of all of them.
Yeah. The other thing is this: if you are constantly texting and calling or whatever combination, you're not putting your phone away. She's using her phone so much. And by the way, I mean, and she's a woman. I mean, where is a woman like that going to put her phone away? Either in her purse or her back pocket? I mean, it literally a butt dial. Like, is she literally claiming these are butt dials? I don't know.
But hanging up, and I have made this argument. Listen, I have made butt dials in my life. Okay, happens. Has it happened to me in the last decade? No. Since I had a face ID and I'm not, a butt face or whatever, like my butt face isn't the same, but there is something to be said for if you made one. Typically, it would have gone through the message machine and then you would hear yourself, right? And then you have to hang up. You can't dial, hang up, and then redial. I'm not buying it. I don't care. It didn't happen.
Which is more statistically improbable? A, she makes 5 or 6 or 7 butt dials like we saw. No, this is hard. Hold on. Or B, Brian Albert and Brian Higgins literally having a butt dial conversation within 1 minute of each other and both claim, I know nothing about it.
I don't know. Which is less statistically possible.
The answer is they're both impossible, which is part of the thing with this shit show of a case. It just, none of this makes any sense.
Yeah. That was wild. Now I noticed and I noted off the bat yesterday that Jennifer McCabe had distanced herself from knowing Julie Nagel. And I felt like it was a weird move. She was like, hey, yeah, I know her. She watched my dog. She watched our golden doodle when my nephew, baby Brian wasn't available. And I was like, okay, but Hank Brennan specifically said, did you know her? Or were you friendly? Were you friends with her? And she denied that. Now I go back and I said, let's turn back the hands of time. I watched Julie Nagel's testimony, and Julie tells us that she gets there finally, that she did babysit Golden Doodle Bailey, that she did drive around, and Jen must have trusted her enough to drive her children around to sporting events. And also the biggest connection of all, she called her by a nickname that the family calls her, which is Auntie JJ. Julie Nagel calls Jennifer McCabe JJ. And JJ had reached out to her for the timeline for a screenshot of the conversation between Julie, the text between Julie and her brother to determine what time he was there. Why would why would Jen want to do that or feel the need to distance from Julie Nagel because you could see it. Like, I don't know her. Like, I'm like very Caitlin McCabe, I mean, not Caitlin McCabe, Caitlin Albert of Katie McLaughlin. Like, oh yeah, I knew her one time, but it was noticeable to me, Mr. Bederow.
I noticed it. I mean, I remember seeing this yesterday about, you know, on the recommendation of a relative or somebody
Yep.
or a dog sitter. And then he asked, and she said, well, we're not really friends. She just
Mm,
was recommended by somebody to watch our
Baby
dog,
Bryant. Yes.
whoever it was. So I remember that. Why she would literally try to separate from her when she later is going to drive her home,
Yes.
and then later, need her text messages for her timeline.
Mhm.
I don't know. It was noticeable, but I don't know. I don't have an answer that jumps to mind as to why one way or the other that was essential. I don't know.
Yeah, I was wondering. I was like, "What is this?" Because I don't know. I just noticed it, and
Yeah,
I
no, I
said,
noticed it too.
"Oh, yeah." And then the other thing that I have seen is that she was, or Jen specifically, was very kind of uh, tiptoeing and dancing around the alcohol consumption. And I know that in the first trial that the jury was very hung up on alcohol, right? For them, and I know this is a completely different jury, I know everything, but alcohol plus a car plus Officer John O'Keefe not with us anymore, they were leaping to conclusions, right? And I see Jennifer McCabe and Kerry Roberts push the narrative. And they're pushing this narrative of, oh, and we told Karen, you were so drunk, you shouldn't have been driving. We were telling Karen there was a concern. I couldn't let her drive because she was so drunk. And I clutch my butt over that. And I go, oh, because it just makes me like it feels like they're pushing it. What are your thoughts?
Does, but again, skilled lawyers, which we have here,
We
obviously
do very.
can exploit this to their advantage. Okay.
Okay.
What I mean by that is, so we believe that Karen was blotto. Okay, whatever. Fine. We don't want her driving. Okay. Well, then why, when she said, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? And had a busted taillight, did these two geniuses say, oh my God, did she run over him? Okay. Why now go back to Kerry Roberts during her first interview where she said none of this? Why not? I didn't want to accuse anyone. Well, wait a minute. You knew Karen was shit faced, according to what we're talking about now.
Yep.
You knew that she kept saying, "Oh my God, could I have hit him?" We knew all of this. We knew she had a cracked taillight. We knew she wasn't making any sense about where he was. Karen, I told you, like, you came to our house. Then why weren't they immediately attuned or acutely aware that something happened here? And she probably did hit him.
Oh. And that's so interesting. And I was thinking, even if possible, now tell me if I'm wild here, but would it be appropriate to say, are you suggesting that when Officer John O'Keefe and Karen Reed were leaving the bar, that Officer John O'Keefe would have gotten into a car with someone who was inebriated as an officer of the law and didn't believe that Karen was able to drive? Are you suggesting that there was a lack of respect for our laws, and that Officer John O'Keefe would allow Karen to break the law by driving that night? He
Well,
got into a vehicle with her, and are you suggesting that there was a lack of accountability on everyone's part? They wouldn't have just got an Uber?
well,
Too much?
obviously they should have gotten an Uber. None of this maybe would have happened. But if we're saying would John O'Keefe, because he was a police officer, either A, not drive drunk, or B, get in a car with a drunk driver. I'm here to tell you that the rate of drunk driving between civilians and cops is the same. Okay.
Probably higher.
No, well, I'm not going to say that, but look, the
Yeah.
fact a lot of police officers, like a lot of lawyers, a lot of dentists, a lot of
Nurses. Yeah.
they're they're not going to literally sit there and say, "Well, I'm not getting in the car with her because she's been drinking," or I mean, it is what it is. So I don't think it would
I just
be.
wanted to hit like the accountability, like, or not the accountability, but it's like you're trying to, because it's only to villainize. It's not fact based, right? It's only to villainize, because you would all say that everyone was in a good mood. We have all video footage from the Waterfall Bar and Grill where you see no one slurring, I mean, stumbling over one another. I mean, the video evidence we do have doesn't show that.
That's probably because they do this all the time. I mean, I mean, what is the one central link to the social life of that you hear about all of these people? White Claws and Jameson and beer. I mean, I've never seen so many people in their 40s and 50s who it appears that all social activity revolves around drinking.
Yeah.
They seem to go to bars a lot for people, of that age, and then even are going to go home and pound some more when there's a blizzard coming after being out all night at that age. I mean, I think it's just
Culture. Yeah.
and look, and some of it is very sad. I mean, you saw some of the text messages earlier where they thought were a big deal, where they were showing, Karen and John fighting, as, by the way, couples do. But,
Yep.
there was that one message where, I mean, if I'm wrong, correct me, but where John said, I'm still drunk from last night or something.
I just sobered up. Yeah.
And it doesn't mean anything in the case. It's just kind of like that's tough. Obviously alcohol is a huge part of the culture of this whole Canton scene.
Can I ask you this too? And I brought it up a couple of times on Vinny's show on Core TV. It's that, like, this relationship, Karen and John, the pandemic relationship, right? Like, that they rekindled in February of 2020. The
Okay.
world shuts down March 13th. Karen and John are like instant family, right? She comes over and basically doesn't go back home. The world, everyone's locked down. You guys are everyone's together. She's immediately thrust into a position that she's, I'm sure, like, happy to do, where she is staying home with the kids. Officer John O'Keefe is able to go back to the office down in Boston, right? He's able to go back to the precinct. And, it's a whirlwind. It's fast. It is lockdown loving. Okay. And I think that is not really, and I know it doesn't probably matter as much, but when you see how fast everything occurred, right? It was like they just were, they were right in an instant family unit. And then the world started opening back up at right about 18 months later, right? Around the end of 21, they go to Aruba. They have the Aruba incident, allegedly. A full-faced vixen named Marietta Sullivan may or may not have made out with Officer O'Keefe at an elevator. You're seeing things because you were isolated, right? I know a lot of human beings in our country statistically had an increase in alcohol and substance use disorder. There were, there were things that you were at home. You had to make do with what you could. And I think they really maybe started to see that, like, hey, maybe this wouldn't be the person that I want to hang out with for the long run. But you didn't notice it until then. And again, that doesn't equal I'm going to unintentionally be in a jealous rage and run you over one night.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just a bad look all around, and maybe it's time,
Yeah.
place, and circumstance, and a perfect
Yeah.
storm of. But I mean, the reality is everything you heard in this case about every meeting, everything everyone was doing was centered around drinking. And when there's that much drinking, that much driving, nothing good will come from it.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And with those text messages, Mr. Bederow, I just one question to wrap that part up. I felt like I saw more this trial, or it hit me different. The text messages, did they feel the same to you or different to you this go around?
I mean, I think their manner of presenting the ones that they did was
Mm-hmm.
neater. I do think Brendan is better at this organizationally and
Yeah.
strategically than Lally. I mean, that's just a fact. So I think grouping them together the way they did is fine. I'm not a big fan of the, enter Guarino stage left 5 times during the case, but um, I just think it flows better when they read them chronologically in order and at a certain topic. So I mean, I don't nothing jumps out as anything different. I just think the manner of presentation has been better.
Yeah. Me too. I just was like, I don't know why. I think I missed maybe somehow about like kind of a bit of like a pull and pull, a bit of a communication deficit, 100% with, if John's going to tell you one time, I'm sorry, that's all you're going to get. I am a daughter of not a Boston cop, of a Massachusetts cop. I have cousins, my grandfather, everybody are Massachusetts cops. And I tell you, and I mean it deeply, that like they're stubborn men, most all of them. And like, and especially if you're a specific age or older, maybe then I said maybe the younger ones are a different breed. But like the culture of going to the club right after your shift, it didn't matter if your shift ended at 7 in the morning. They used to go, if they did 11 to 7, they would be at the Elks or American Legion, whatever, at the
Listen,
end of their shift.
look at the Bryans. Okay, they go to New York, go to a police bureau. That's fine. That's appropriate.
Nice. Yeah.
Start pounding drinks in New York City. I'm have a vague idea, but they probably went. What area? They come home, and what do? Straight to the hilly or whatever they call it, the
Yeah.
hillside. And then, oh, now they're all at the waterfall. Let's go. And then let's, come back to the house. And it's not enough. And then even look at Higgins. Like, I left because you didn't have what I wanted. No whiskey, no Higgins. I'm out of here. Uh,
No Jameson and ginger. I don't drink beer. Really? Oh, yeah.
how about you just hang out with your friends? But no, it's all about if I don't get my booze, I'm out of here. I got to go park some cars at the police station.
Let me go play some musical government issued vehicles. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my. Yeah, and then the only other thing regarding demeanor of Jennifer McCabe or in her testimony was it was quite like not alarming, but it was so different to me to see her and she apologized multiple times. Now, listen, as someone who is an apologizer, if I am incorrect or when I am slow online, I'm like, I'm so sorry, lovies. I'm so sorry. I have been my whole life an apologizer. But to hear her say she's sorry to Alan Jackson, like a couple, I'm sorry. Pardon, I apologize. I didn't mean to. I'm like, oh, this is a woman who last go around in the first trial, I won't say 1.0 because I know you don't like it. In the
That's yeah,
first
it doesn't
trial,
I just think it's
in the first trial, she was answering for the court. May I approach the witness? Do you remember that? And her going, yes, you
yes,
may,
yeah,
right? You may.
I remember that.
Oh, and now we have her apologizing. I mean, this rebrand, Mr. Bederow, I know that there are large gaps in that credibility. It's shot. But when you look at her and the demeanor and all of it together, you know that juries, they're not supposed to, but they're judgy. They are judgy and they're looking at you. And it doesn't matter what she says, It's how she says it that I think, of course, the defense will tie it all up, but I do think I don't know how Friday will go, but if she doesn't lose her cool and she doesn't snap like we saw in one point in the first trial, that that will be a win for her, at least for her personally, perhaps.
I don't know. I mean, they
No.
obviously told her to cool the engines a little bit and
Yeah.
let's not be so hostile. And again, to her credit, she certainly comes off less offensive as a person than I think a lot of people viewed her the first time. But at the end of the day, her story stinks. And that's what summation is for. And some of the things that she did choose to fight them on are the kinds of things that are never going to make sense. Again,
Right.
the whole did I hit him versus I hit him, but I don't care what you said, I always said this. I mean, that's kind of thing where I mean that just is never going to make sense. The lying to the FBI, and she was a deer in the headlights at that point. Like her
Yes.
demeanor
Yes.
changed. She was scared. Okay, she looked just uncomfortable, and people see that kind of thing. I don't think jury's going to deem her credible or not credible because she didn't lash out. First of all, they don't know that she lashed out repeatedly the last time and all the things that she did. They're getting what they see, and what they're seeing are a lot of inconsistencies that don't make sense. They're seeing somebody who is really connected in Canton and that area, and the cops let them do what they want when they interview people. But when she gets something as simple as being approached by a couple of brick agents from the FBI to come up and ask her a few questions, she goes into denial mode, lie mode, and panic mode. I mean, they see all this kind of stuff. They see the way you could. There's a million things. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole thing with the dog. I mean, I thought was interesting today.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
she's barging in the room and she's barging in a house where all the lights are on and there's a big German shepherd that's there, and she says nothing happened. And obviously the dog is going to become, during the defense case, an issue. And then you don't think that's going to come back in summation? Of course it is. So there's a long way to go, and she still has to survive another day. I mean,
Yes.
she obviously took a lot of hits today, and I assume she's going to take a lot tomorrow. And the other thing, give the lawyers credit for the manner of cross. Okay, they got her today to emphatically deny a lot of things that are indefensible. Again, the I hit him, I hit him. I mean, that was just absurd, her denial.
Right.
But they did it and already established that that's what she does.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now go to the end when they get to the 227 and her cell phone records
Yep.
and all those deleted records. They've already laid the foundation for how she's going to react. And they already have a negative view of it. And they already know that she lied to the FBI, right?
Yep.
When they asked her about the search and all these deleted records, and if you remember, there's a whole ton of records that are deleted right up until around the time when Lank comes back. I mean, it's pretty interesting. She's going to deny deleting all of those records. And they're going to shove the report in her face. And she's going to say, I didn't delete that. I didn't delete that. I don't care what it says. I know what I did and what I didn't do. And it is going to come out, though, when she met with the cops. What did they let her do? Oh, I have messages with,
My daughters. Yeah.
and I delete those. Now you're supposed to take it on faith that that's what she did. Now that's poor police work too. I mean, a
Right.
better police response would have been, man, we're not going to look at those unless we have reason to. So, we'll see how she survives tomorrow, because she's going to get hit pretty hard. And when I say hit pretty hard, I don't mean bullied. I mean, frankly, they got along relatively well today.
Yeah.
There's moments of inflection and incredulity and all of that sort of thing. But, she still has a lot of topics that she's really vulnerable on to go.
100%. And now there was that question regarding the multiple meetings prior to her testimony. After she had met Hank, she was introduced to him. Then there's an iteration of Brian Tully, McLaughlin, Lally, and victim witness advocate. Now, there also was a meeting from last night, allegedly, that occurred, and it was per the court, and you saw AJ shut it down very quickly, and so did Judge Cannoni. Any thoughts on what some kind of meeting like that would be, Mr. Bederow, or no?
I mean, honestly, I have no idea. It may be nothing. I can't think of a reason off the top of my head why they would need to be talking on a
Yeah,
Zoom.
but it didn't seem to be anything nefarious because
No,
clearly Alan knew about it. Like,
yeah,
he was immediately like, "Oh, nope, not on that."
no.
So
But
yeah.
what I would like to see them do, because you're talking about all the meetings with the DA, I'd like to see them do. They haven't done it yet. Maybe they'll come back to it. You saw what they did with Nuttall
Yeah.
about how did your story change from 2 to 3, about meeting with Brennan and Tully. And what I'd like to see them do is ask if any during these meetings, if the issue of the timeline outside in your text messages came up, and was there any discussion with the prosecutors and police about, you know, I don't remember that, so I'm just going to say 2. In other words, did the DA know in advance that that's what you were going to say? Now, she'll probably say no, but I'm not sure anybody will believe that.
Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't the questions. What are your thoughts for any kind of Judge Cannoni stopping, re-asking questions, picking the points in which she does? It feels as though it is to muff up the flow of the defense. They are Alan Jackson is just ready to, like, he is a well-oiled machine and ready to pounce, and he's got it all lined up, and she goes, "Yeah, I think we should stop right here." I go, "Oh my Lord," every time.
Obviously, I don't like it. I don't like the exasperation about move on, one more question,
Yes.
sighing. Can you answer that when there are objections, which is essentially passing the buck from a court, which is supposed to make a legal ruling on an objection, and giving it to the witness to make a factual ruling on the question, which is not how that's supposed to work. The gratuitous comment today about, ladies and gentlemen, a mere question without an answer is not evidence. I mean, there are just too many commentaries that, yeah, no, I don't, I think it looks terrible. I can understand why people would say it gives them the impression that there's some degree of bias, and it does happen 99% of the time with the defense, or 100%.
Yeah.
And you see even things, like with this ARCA spectacle. There was no way she was ever excluding ARCA.
Ever.
It was never going to happen. It would have been a flagrant due process violation. And they went through this dog and pony show. And even at the end, they're throwing rules in their faces and telling them, I don't like what you're doing. And then when Alessi's going to argue and frankly blow her up because she's using the wrong rule that's not even applicable,
Right.
well, I know it and you're going to win. So let's just sit down. And then even after that, say, let's just try the case, and I don't want any more nonsense. That's directed to the defense. And the question is, what nonsense? What the hell are we talking about? What was nonsensical exactly about what they did vis-a-vis the ARCA stuff? Whereas when they had the hearing, a day or two before, and you had the prosecutor swinging from the chandelier, screaming at the top of his lungs, acting foolish, frankly.
Mhm.
Most judges would say, cut the shit with this. This is like ridiculous, screaming and pounding. And you go back to the first trial, and there was one time where the defense wanted to make a record, and there was no jury, and they were upset, got a little animated, and enough with the histrionics. There's no jury here. It does appear to be, not an even scale on the things that apparently the court doesn't want. And people can draw their own conclusion why, but the way the objections are being handled, or the gratuitous comments, there, I don't like it at all, because the judge, you should never be signaling to the jury what view she may have, or whether she agrees with the argument of one of the parties. It should just be neutral. It should be, sustained, overruled, or sustained, not I'll let him have it or do it. Just objection sustained, objection overruled, be done with it.
Now, huge ruling though with ARCA, right? And Judge Cannoni allowing everything in.
Yeah, but that, again, I mean, lawyers who are doing this honestly would always tell you that was always going to be the case. I mean, you're
But
talking
the
about,
defense didn't ask for they only asked for basically to be rebuttal witnesses, right? For Judson B. Welcher and
no, no,
Aperture.
no. What they're saying is we want them to give their affirmative opinion that we don't believe, Carr hit John O'Keefe in the way everything is done. And then they want to ask them an entire line of questioning where they can just destroy, presumably, the report of Welcher. In other words, they can say, we looked at this and this is why they're wrong. They're trying to get the double whammy. Number one, they're going to tell the jury, and I'm paraphrasing, there's no car accident here. And number two, the DA's expert who's telling you there is doesn't know what they're talking about. So Brennan initially was trying to exclude part two. They're not allowed to say doesn't know what they're talking about. But then he comes in yesterday and says, oh, by the way, I think they should be kicked off the stand entirely and not allowed to testify. But they were always going to be allowed to do both because, number one, exculpatory witnesses are allowed to testify as long as they're qualified experts, and they are, obviously. And number two, the idea that you're not going to let a credentialed expert critique the work of the other party's expert is ridiculous. I mean, that she has a right to defend herself.
Yeah, no, and I always thought that Karen would be able to I always thought that they would be able to rebut the Aperture, right? But when they are not able, because of the protective order for the federal information, like all of their testing and things like that, I thought that in my brain, I believed that Hank might have had a leg to stand on, because if they can't rebut it, then how would they be able to? So
this is how sometimes you get prosecutors who play games. Okay. Normally, when the defense will make Brady claims or whatever, or discovery demands, the only evidence that could ever qualify is evidence that's in their possession, custody, or control. And normally, if you ask a state prosecutor for stuff that they don't have, that perhaps in a rare case the U.S. attorney has, that's not in the prosecution's possession, custody, or control. And the DA will tell you, I don't have it.
So I can't. Yes.
I don't have. So piss off.
Yep.
Goodbye. Now the shoe's on the other foot in this case. Okay. The defense doesn't have access to stuff that's in federal custody or under a federal protective order. And what he had been saying for months is, I don't care. Rule 14 says this. And if they don't get it, I know it's not their fault. Initially, that's what he said. But if they don't turn it over, it's not my problem. They don't get to do it. That's disingenuous. That is completely disingenuous. This has always, about ARCA, been completely disingenuous, faux righteous indignation. They were always going to testify. The idea that this is about, text messages and all that nonsense, that's
wild.
All, yeah. And look, if he's going to, at trial, really go after Dr. Wolf as a conniving, lying weasel, that is legal suicide. The jury is going to look at him like, you have lost your freaking mind. Okay. if they go after them for the $20,000 or the deleted messages, or you sent him an outline, or you were informed by, another agency, because we won't say the U.S. attorney, what was happening during the trial. If you think that's going to impress anyone, when at the end of the day, you got a preview of this, what Wolf is going to say is, we got hired by another entity unrelated to these two, had no idea who you were, had no idea who Karen Reed was or the lawyers, came up with an opinion, and later we were given equal access, or to be accessed equally by both parties. And the defense came to us, not you. And the answer is obvious. Why? Because it's exculpatory evidence. So
Yeah.
all of a sudden, these people are not believable because Brennan's going to scream and yell and say you're lying. I mean, seriously, that's what they're going to.
No. And I saw that tweet you posted from the one very interesting character of Wendy Murphy, stating that ARCA will be going out of business, baby.
Yes, these two doctors are going to come in. They're going to perjure themselves, and the company is going to go out of business. How Wendy is in business is shocking. I don't think she is. I don't think she.
She's in business at Julie's. She goes to Julie Grant's and just likes to grandstand about, make turd comments about Turtle Boy.
Well, I mean, look, what that tweet was dumb. What can you say? The ARCA, who has all these contracts with the U.S. military, the National Hockey League, all these other, large private and public entities, with the kind of guys that they have, the idea that they're going out of business because they had the misfortune of being contacted by lawyers for a woman who claims that she's innocent, and they have compelling exculpatory evidence which will help advance, a finding of not guilty. And so, now they're part of a defense scheme, conniving with the U.S. attorney and the defense to screw the Norfolk DA. Now, these are the same people who will like to say, that people who favor Karen are wearing tinfoil hats. If you think that there's a conspiracy between Karen Reed's lawyers, and the United States government,
this attorney's office,
do the Norfolk DA's office, and that there's some big conspiracy, look in the mirror and check yourself when you're talking about conspiracies. That's just stupid.
Yep. Touch some grass. Okay. Everyone go outside, have a moment, reconnect, ground yourself with this earth.
Come out of the attic, smell the grass. Exactly.
Oh, well, Mr. Bederow, you are incredible. I thank you so much for your time tonight. You are the best to ever do it. You are a friend that we all appreciate, that you bring us the business. You break it down, you tell us what's up, don't sugarcoat it, and call the balls and strikes like only you can. And I appreciate you.
Okay. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. I hope to see you soon and get a good night's sleep. We do not have court tomorrow, Loveys. It'll be a Friday restart for hopefully what'll be the last day of cross for Jennifer McCabe.
Okay. Take care.
That's it. Bye, Mr. Bederow. Oh, Loveys. He's incredible. He breaks it down for us in a way that no one else can. He is the OG, and I don't know what else to say, but I am signing off as Nurse Kim or J-Lo, Jenny from the Block, circa 2002. Thank you for answering my FaceTime, Loveys. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.